Black Delivery Girl solves the problem that 20 engineers failed to solve. If you're so smart, solve it now. They were in shock. If you're as smart as you think you are, then fix it now, yelled Michael Harrison, TechCorp's chief technology officer, pointing to the red screens flashing throughout the control center. The system had crashed completely 3 hours ago, paralyzing operations for dozens of client companies. Keisha Williams, only 24 years old, was there just to deliver the lunch Michael had ordered through the app. Her thermal backpack was still slung over her shoulder when she dared to comment on the error code she saw on the main screen. A comment that made all the engineers stop working and look at her as if she had spoken in an alien language. "Sorry, but that error is caused by a cache memory conflict," she said simply as she placed the order on the table. "You tried to reboot the primary server without clearing the pending transaction buffer." The silence that followed was deafening. 20 engineers from top universities, some with six-figure salaries, were confronted by a black food delivery girl who had identified in seconds what they had been unable to solve in hours. "Very funny," Michael laughed sarcastically, his voice dripping with condescension. "I bet you didn't even finish high school. How about you go back to your deliveries and leave the real work to those who understand it?" The other engineers chuckled, some shaking their heads in disdain. David Park, the senior engineer, crossed his arms and said, "Girl, this isn't like fixing a broken microwave. This is an infrastructure system that moves millions of dollars." Keisha stood motionless, her brown eyes maintaining a calmness that contrasted sharply with the chaos around her. There was something in that look, an almost dangerous serenity that suggested she knew something they didn't. "All right," she replied in a soft voice, adjusting the strap of her backpack. "But when you find out that I'm right and the system is back up and running in exactly 2 minutes after you follow my suggestion, remember this moment." Michael let out a loud, exaggerated laugh. 2 minutes? Honey, that system has been down for 3 hours. We have a team of 20 experts trying to fix it. You really think a food delivery girl is going to teach us something? Keisha smiled slightly, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, but carried a weight that made some of those present feel inexplicably uncomfortable. It was as if she was keeping a secret too powerful to be revealed before the time was right. If this story of prejudice and underestimation touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple lunch delivery would become the catalyst for a revolution that no one would ever forget. Michael Harrison couldn't get that moment out of his head. 3 days had passed since the black delivery woman had dared to correct him in front of his entire team, and worst of all, she was right. The system had returned to normal exactly 2 minutes after they followed her suggestion. But Michael wasn't the kind of man who would allow himself to be humiliated by someone he considered inferior. With a degree from MIT, 15 years of experience in technology, and a salary of $200,000 a year, he simply couldn't accept that a simple food delivery girl knew something he didn't. "I got her name," said David Park, entering Michael's office with a mischievous smile. "Keisha Williams, 24 years old, works for 3 different delivery apps, lives on the east side of town, and here's the interesting part." David paused dramatically. "She dropped out of college in her 3rd year of a computer science degree." Michael raised his eyebrows. Interested. Dropped out? Why? Apparently she couldn't pay her tuition. Low-income family, unable to afford her education. Typical case of someone who dreams too big and doesn't have the structure to support her dreams. What Michael didn't know was that Keisha had been forced to drop out of college not because of a lack of ability, but because of a family tragedy. Her mother had been diagnosed with cancer in her 3rd year of college, and Keisha had to choose between continuing her studies or working to pay for medical treatment. The choice was obvious. For 2 years, she worked 3 different jobs during the day and studied programming on her own in the early hours of the morning. Her desk was a cardboard box in the room she shared with her mother, and her computer lab was a used laptop she had bought with borrowed money. "You know what bothers me?" Michael continued, turning his chair to look out the 23rd floor window. "People like her think they can come into our world and talk to us as equals. She doesn't understand that there's a hierarchy, a natural order of things." David laughed, sharing the same mindset. "Exactly. I bet you she memorized a few lines of code on the internet and now thinks she's an expert. Beginner's luck, nothing more." What they didn't know was that Keisha had developed on her own at home a route optimization system for delivery drivers that was more efficient than anything TechCorp had created. She had turned her need to survive into a learning opportunity, creating algorithms that maximized her earnings and minimized her work time. The following Thursday, Michael decided it was time to put the cocky delivery girl in her place. He called every delivery app in the city and used his influence as a corporate customer to make a special request. He wanted Keisha Williams banned from making deliveries to TechCorp, allegations of inappropriate behavior and disrespect toward customers. He lied to the supervisors. As the chief technology officer of one of the largest companies in the city, I cannot allow disrespectful employees to continue providing services here. In less than 24 hours, Keisha received 3 notifications. Her account had been suspended on the 3 apps she used for work. No detailed explanation, no right to defend herself, no source of income. Sitting in her kitchen, staring at her mother's medical bills piled on the table, Keisha felt a mixture of anger and determination she hadn't experienced in a long time. Her hands trembled slightly as she reread the suspension messages, but it wasn't fear that caused the tremor. "Honey, what's wrong?" asked her mother Helen, entering the kitchen with difficulty, still recovering from her latest chemotherapy session. "Nothing, Mom, just a problem at work. I'll take care of it." Keisha hugged Helen gently, feeling the fragility of the body that had fought so hard to stay alive. "I'll fix everything." That night, Keisha turned on her old laptop and started doing something she hadn't done in a long time. She started coding. But this time, it wasn't to optimize delivery routes or solve simple logic problems. This time, she was building something much more ambitious. Every line of code she wrote was fueled by years of humiliation, of looks of contempt, of doors slammed in her face. Michael Harrison had just awakened something in her that he could never have imagined. The silent fury of someone who had been underestimated her entire life and had finally decided to prove her worth. For a moment, when she read the suspension messages, Keisha had hung her head and felt the familiar weight of injustice. But anyone who knew her true story would have known that she was just gathering strength like a storm that formed silently before unleashing its full power. Keisha spent the next 2 weeks living a double reality. During the day, she desperately searched for new jobs, cleaning, waitressing, anything that would pay her mother's medical bills. At night, she transformed into someone completely different, a determined programmer building something that would change everything. What Michael Harrison didn't know was that his attempt to destroy Keisha's life had created the perfect fuel for something much bigger. Every no she received in job interviews, every pitying look from employers, every unpaid bill became another line of code in the system she was developing. "Honey, you've hardly slept." She hardly slept. "What project is that?" Helen said, watching her daughter typing frantically at 3 in the morning. "Something that will change our lives, Mom. Trust me." At TechCorp, Michael was celebrating his victory over the inconvenient delivery girl. During a meeting with his team, he couldn't resist telling the story as if it were a funny anecdote. "Remember that girl who dared to correct us last week?" Michael laughed, leaning on the conference table. "Well, let's just say she won't be bothering us anymore. I used my contacts to make sure she's blacklisted from every delivery app in the city." David roared with laughter. "Perfect. She needs to learn that there's a natural hierarchy. People like us don't take insults from people like her." What they didn't know was that Jennifer Chun, a senior Asian programmer on the team, was discreetly recording the conversation on her phone. Jennifer had been the only one to defend Keisha on that fateful day, but she had been quickly silenced by her colleagues. Now, hearing Michael openly admit to ruining an innocent person's life, she felt she had to act. That same night, Jennifer did something that could cost her her job. She tracked Keisha down through social media and sent her a private message. "Hi Keisha, I'm Jennifer. I work at TechCorp. I was there the day you solved our system problem. I need to tell you some things about what Michael did to you. Can we talk?" When Keisha received the message, she initially hesitated. It could be a trap, but something in the sincerity of Jennifer's words made her agree to meet her at a discreet coffee shop in the city center. "He really did that?" Keisha asked incredulously after listening to the recording of the meeting where Michael admitted to sabotaging her career. "Worse, he's bragging about it," Jennifer replied, her eyes flashing with indignation. "Michael Harrison is a narcissist who can't stand being corrected by anyone, especially a black woman. He did it out of pure wounded ego." Jennifer slid a piece of paper across the table. "These are the contact details for all of TechCorp's major corporate clients, companies that rely on our systems for critical operations. If someone could prove that Michael is making decisions based on personal bias rather than technical competence." Keisha took the paper with trembling hands. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me."
Because I've been where you are, Jennifer sighed. 3 years ago, Michael tried to fire me after I corrected a mistake he made in an investor presentation. The only difference is that I had union protection and a lawyer. You didn't have that luck. But maybe we can create our own justice. That night, Keisha worked with renewed energy. Now, she wasn't just building a system, she was building a trap. Her project had evolved into something much more ambitious, a security vulnerability analysis platform that could scan any corporate system and identify critical flaws in real time. But the real genius lay in what she had discovered during her sleepless nights of research. TechCorp had dozens of critical vulnerabilities in their own systems, flaws that Michael and his team of 20 engineers had failed to detect, but which she had mapped out completely.
Over the next week, Keisha began implementing the first phase of her plan. Using information Jennifer had provided, she created fake social media profiles and began connecting with CTOs and chief technology officers at TechCorp's top client companies. Her strategy was elegant in its simplicity. She offered free security audits to companies that relied on outsourced systems. Nothing illegal, nothing unethical, just a talented young woman offering her services to identify vulnerabilities that could put companies at risk. What these companies didn't know was that many of the vulnerabilities Keisha would find in their systems came directly from flaws in the products and services provided by TechCorp. "How's the project going?" Helen asked one evening, watching her daughter finally relax after 2 weeks of intense work. "Better than I expected, Mom. Much better." Keisha smiled, but there was something different about that smile. It was no longer the expression of a desperate young woman trying to survive. It was the smile of someone who had found her true strength. At that same moment, across town, Michael Harrison received the first of many phone calls that would change his life forever. The CTO of Megacorp, one of TechCorp's largest clients, was on the line. "Michael, we need to talk urgently. We've received an independent security report that shows critical flaws in all the systems you implemented for us. Flaws that you assured us didn't exist." Michael felt a chill run down his spine. "There must be some mistake, Mr. Rodriguez. Our systems have passed every check." "The report is from a security expert named Kay Williams. Do you know her?" The phone almost slipped out of Michael's hand. Kay Williams. Keisha Williams! The delivery girl he had destroyed was back. And apparently she wasn't delivering food anymore. "Michael, are you still there?" Yes, I'll look into it right away." When Michael hung up the phone, his hands were shaking slightly. It wasn't fear that caused the tremor. Not yet. It was the growing realization that maybe, just maybe, he had seriously underestimated someone he should have left alone. But what Michael didn't know yet was that this phone call was only the first in a carefully orchestrated series. Keisha wasn't just attacking a TechCorp client. She was preparing a systematic expose that would reveal years of technical negligence, decisions based on prejudice, and incompetence masquerading as authority. While Michael struggled to understand how a simple delivery girl had gained access to such detailed information about vulnerabilities that his own team hadn't detected, Keisha was 3 steps ahead, implementing the second phase of a plan that would turn his public humiliation into a lesson Michael Harrison would never forget. For a moment, when he saw the name Kay Williams on his computer screen, Michael felt a twinge of something that could have been recognition or perhaps even regret. But anyone who knew the true nature of justice knew that some mistakes are too big to be corrected with simple apologies, and that sometimes the only language people like Michael understand is one spoken through consequences impossible to ignore. The following Monday, Michael Harrison arrived at the office to find his secretary pale-faced and with a stack of urgent messages on her desk. "Mr. Harrison, we need to talk," she said nervously. "We've had 12 contract cancellations in the last 24 hours, all citing the same reason: critical security flaws identified by an independent audit." Michael felt the floor drop out from under him. 12 contracts represented nearly 60% of TechCorp's annual revenue. "What audit? Who authorized this?" "No one authorized it, sir. A consultant offered free reviews to our customers, and
Well, they took him up on it. The phone rang. It was Richard Goldman, CEO of Dataflow Industries, one of the company's largest customers. Michael, I'm canceling our contract immediately. This K. Williams found vulnerabilities that you assured us didn't exist. Even worse, I've discovered that you've known about these flaws for months and didn't tell us. Richard, there must be a misunderstanding. The misunderstanding was trusting you. This consultant showed us system logs dating back 6 months. You have exposed us to catastrophic risks and lied about it. Michael hung up, his hands shaking. K. Williams had access to TechCorp's internal logs. How was that possible? The answer came in the form of an email. Jennifer Chun had sent a message to the entire company with the subject line, "Transparency and Integrity, a necessary conversation." Dear colleagues, as an employee of this company for 5 years, I feel compelled to share some information that affects our professional integrity. The email went on to detail how Michael had used his position to sabotage Keisha's career out of pure prejudice, including recording the meeting where he bragged about destroying her life. Keisha Williams identified a critical problem in our systems in seconds. Our response was to humiliate her and then ruin her livelihood. Meanwhile, the same vulnerabilities she pointed out have cost us millions in security breaches over the past few months. Within 15 minutes, the email had spread throughout the company. Within 30 minutes, it was on social media. Within an hour, every tech website in the city was covering the story. Michael burst into Jennifer's office. "You are fired! How dare you defame me like that?" "Actually," said a calm voice from the doorway, "you're protected by employment laws against discrimination, and you're in serious trouble." It was Keisha, accompanied by a lawyer and 2 journalists. She was carrying a laptop and a folder of documents. "Surprise," she said with a serene smile. "I'm here to do that security audit you insisted I wasn't capable of doing." Michael choked. "You can't be here! Security! Call security!" "I didn't break in," Keisha replied calmly. "I was officially hired by TechCorp's board of directors to conduct a full audit following revelations of systematic negligence. Apparently, when 12 major clients cancel contracts on the same day, shareholders start asking uncomfortable questions." The journalists turned on their cameras. One of them asked, "Mr. Harrison, is it true that you used your corporate influence to sabotage the career of a qualified Black employee just because she corrected you publicly?" Michael looked around desperately. Jennifer was smiling discreetly. David Park had hidden in his office, and other employees were watching through the glass partitions. "That's a misunderstanding," he stammered. Keisha opened her laptop. "I can show you exactly what I found on TechCorp systems. 23 critical vulnerabilities that should have been fixed months ago. Flaws that cost the company's customers at least $4 million in losses." The screen showed detailed reports, error codes, system logs, irrefutable evidence of technical negligence. "The interesting part," Keisha continued, "is that these flaws were easily identifiable. Any competent programmer would have spotted them during a basic routine review." Michael felt the blood drain from his face. "Our systems passed all the checks." "Your checks were superficial and incompetent," Keisha said, her voice remaining perfectly calm. "You prioritized speed of implementation over actual security, exactly the kind of decision someone would make if they were more concerned about protecting their ego than doing their job properly." Keisha's lawyer spoke up. "Mr. Harrison, my client is considering lawsuits for defamation, intentional interference with contractual relations, and racial discrimination. The evidence is substantial." "And the customers affected by the technical negligence," added the second journalist, "are organizing a class action lawsuit against TechCorp. Estimated losses are already exceeding $8 million. Michael slumped in his chair. In less than a week, he had lost most of his clients, the trust of his team, and now faced lawsuits that could destroy not only his career, but also his financial stability. "Why?" he asked, looking at Keisha with a mixture of despair and something that could have been belated recognition. "You could have just moved on." Keisha closed her laptop and looked him straight in the eye. Because someone needed to show that competence has no color, social class, or origin, and that because people like you only learn when the consequences are impossible to ignore. As she left the room, followed by the journalists and Jennifer, who had just resigned to join the consulting firm Keisha was founding, Michael remained alone in his office, finally understanding that he had underestimated much more than a simple delivery girl. He had underestimated the strength of someone who turned every act of discrimination into fuel for a revenge as elegant as it was devastating. 6 months later, Keisha Williams sat in her own office on the 21st floor of a corporate building, watching the city through panoramic windows. Her company, Secure Code Solutions, had grown from an idea born out of injustice to one of the most respected cybersecurity consulting firms in the country. "We have 17 new contracts this month," said Jennifer Chun, now the company's director of operations, entering the room with a stack of proposals. 3 of them are former Tech Corp clients who came to us specifically after seeing our work. Keisha smiled, but it wasn't the smile of satisfaction at revenge. It was the smile of someone who had found her true strength. "And how's our beloved former company doing?" Keisha asked, even though she already knew the answer. "Michael was fired last week. Tech Corp has lost 80% of its corporate clients in the last 6 months. They're considering bankruptcy." Jennifer paused. "He's suing former clients for breach of contract, but no one is taking him seriously."
"I hear he's working as a freelance consultant, but no one trusts him," Kesha finished. "Interesting how reputation works, isn't it? It takes years to build and seconds to destroy." In fact, Michael Harrison had discovered the hard way that competence was not a matter of a degree or skin color. After being fired from TechCorp, he had desperately tried to rebuild his career. But Jennifer's recording of him admitting to sabotaging Kesha out of prejudice had gone viral in the tech community. Companies that had once fought over his services now avoided any association with his name. His former colleagues, who had once laughed at his prejudice jokes, now pretended not to know him at professional events. David Park had even sent a public message distancing himself from Michael's discriminatory attitudes. "You know what the most ironic part is?" said Helen, Kesha's mother, entering the office with a tray of coffee. Her health had improved dramatically since they were able to afford the best medical care available. "That man tried to destroy you because he thought you weren't worthy of being on his level. Now, you're 3 levels above him." Kesha hugged her mother affectionately. "It wasn't about levels, Mom. It was about proving that talent has no color, social class, or origin, and that sometimes, when the system fails to protect us, we have to build our own justice." The phone rang. It was an invitation to speak at the National Technology Conference, the same event where Michael had been one of the keynote speakers for 5 years in a row. This time, he wasn't even on the guest list. "I'm going to accept," Kesha told Jennifer. "I want to talk about how real diversity in technology isn't just a matter of social inclusion, but of technical excellence. How many problems could be solved more quickly if companies stopped underestimating people based on appearances?" Meanwhile, across town, Michael opened yet another rejection letter for a job opening. His bank account was nearly empty. His luxury apartment had been sold to pay off legal debts, and he now lived in a small studio in the suburbs. For the first time in his life, Michael Harrison was experiencing what it meant to be judged not by his talent, but by his actions. And the consequences were far more devastating than anything he had done to Kesha. "You turned an attempt at humiliation into a show of strength," said Jennifer, watching Kesha review new client contracts. "That wasn't just revenge, it was justice." "The best revenge," Kesha replied, "is not destroying those who hurt you. It's building something so extraordinary that they realize exactly how small they were when they tried to diminish you." A year after that fateful day at TechCorp, Kesha had proven Michael right about one thing. There really was a natural hierarchy. But it wasn't based on skin color, social background, or where someone went to school. It was based on competence, integrity, and the courage to fight for justice when the world tries to silence you. Secure Code Solutions now employed 45 people, including many talented professionals who had been underestimated by traditional companies. Kesha had created not just a business, but a movement that proved that diversity and technical excellence went hand in hand. Michael Harrison tried to destroy a food delivery girl because he couldn't accept that she was smarter than him. He ended up losing everything and unwittingly creating one of the most innovative technology companies in the country. Kesha learned that true victory isn't about making your enemies suffer. It's about achieving such extraordinary success that they realize they were always too small to understand your greatness. If this story of overcoming adversity and justice has inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that competence has no color and that sometimes the universe uses our greatest challenges to lead us to our greatest destiny.